Hello and welcome to the Manifest to Live Life Golden Show. This is episode 90, Afraid of Dying, Navigating Grief, Fear, and Gaining a New Perspective on Death and Life. I was actually asked to do this show and I feel great about it because I feel like we need new perspectives about death. We need new perspectives about the ways that we've been social programmed to be afraid of death. I mean, if we've seen nothing in the last few years, there is definitely a massive fear of death. I mean, we still have people walking around with masks on because they're afraid of getting sick and dying. And the reality is, if you're meant to die, like if there's a destiny for you to die from a sickness, no mask is going to keep you protected from it, and no mask is going to keep you protected from illness. And I don't usually like to get into this subject, but that's the truth of the matter. I am all about speaking the truth, and if you disagree with me, that's okay, but I would implore you to research the microbiome and what we need to build healthy and strong immune systems. We need germs. We need things in our life that are going to help our bodies to get stronger, not weaker. And covering our face, there's so much psychological stuff that goes along with not being able to connect through our smiles and our expressions and being able to speak and being able to be heard. There's so much that goes along with that. So that I'm not going to get deep into that because that could create a lot of angst in this conversation. And I'm not about angst, baby. I'm about uncovering things, of helping you to become awake and aware to new things. And I have missed you all. It's so funny. When there's 1 week between these podcasts, but sometimes I do a lot of things in that 1 week, and it feels like I've been away forever. So I'm excited to be with you today and to share my life experiences and to dive deep into this death conversation, to hopefully give you a new perspective on death that allows you to heal, that allows that grief to heal, and allows you to no longer be afraid of death in the way that maybe you've been in the past or you've been taught to growing up. So we just got back from Texas. We went to Texas Thursday, actually Wednesday night. Our vacation kind of started Wednesday night. We decided that we wanted to just have fun for our Christmas presents to one another. So we decided to book a trip to Austin, Texas, which we've never been before, and saw a comedian there. And we just had a blast. Like, we just had a very relaxing weekend. It was just the two of us, myself and my husband, and we are just like on the same path all the time, and we have so much fun together, and we always want to do the same thing, so it really works. And so, man, it was a great weekend. Just got back last night, but we kicked off the week by seeing Roseanne Barr Wednesday night, and she was hilarious. And I'm so happy that she's back. I'm so happy that she's giving us another. And for whatever you think about her, for me, it's like, I just love people and I feel compassion for people and I'm very forgiving of people. And I think that things get super blown out of proportion in what our society, or whatever the narrative is that wants to be spun. And I just believe that she deserved a second chance. And she was hilarious. I mean, I just laughed the whole time. And I think you do have to have similar belief systems to her, and you kind of have to be okay with the F word. I mean, she's just hilarious. And we had a super fun time doing that. And then Thursday morning, we left for Austin, saw a comedy show there on Friday, went out to nice dinners. One of the things that was really hilarious and interesting to me was Uber drivers. So we didn't rent a car because it was really expensive to rent a car, and it was $50 a day to park it. And we didn't really have plans to go very far. We just wanted to check out Austin, stay close to the hotel room. It was chilly. It was in the 40s and 50s. And this California girl, that is winter. So it was chilly. So we, didn't mind being in the hotel room here and there and torquing the heat up to 80 degrees. So on Friday night, we saw Bill Burr, and Bill Burr, for whatever, your belief is about him, he's strong. He is a strong character, and he was funny. He's not my cup of tea. He definitely is a little too strong for me, as far as I think he crosses some lines that I'm not excited about. But my husband thinks he's hysterical, and we had a great time together. And we hired a lot of Uber drivers, and I think maybe like 10. And what I realized with Uber drivers is when you enter an Uber, you're entering their world. So, I mean, it's almost like being at their house. Like, think about your car, right? You kind of live in your car a little bit, right? So you're subject to their conversation, to their energy, to their music, to their smells, to however they keep their car. And that was very interesting to me. And we like to ask questions. We like to connect with people. And it was just like almost like a human experiment to be in these different Ubers and connect with these people. So we had an idea of just like going to different cities and writing down people's stories and sharing that, like for just for fun. It was really interesting. One guy was a DJ, and actually, he picked us up from Bill Burr, and he couldn't find us for 45 minutes. And we were out in the freezing cold for 45 minutes, but he didn't give up on us, which was great. We got into his car, and it was like entering a nightclub. Thankfully, it was like 85 degrees. There was strobe lights everywhere. The music was blasting. And that was an experience. It was an absolute experience. And it was fun and it was interesting. And I love people. I love connecting with people. So that was really cool. And even having a little bit of an influence. One girl we talked to, my husband asked her, he said, well, so do you like doing Uber? And she was like, no. Because he was like, how was your day? And she's like, okay. And then she was like, no. She said she was in between jobs. And so I asked her, I said, well, did you write it down? So there's like these little things. And by the time we left, my husband said to her as he was getting out of the car, congratulations on your new job, right? Acting as if. And she had this big smile on her face and her energy was so much lighter. And that goes along with things I share all the time about lightening people's load and having an effect on people that in your experience, and how fun that is. So we had a lot of fun with our Uber drivers. Some, were great and some not so great, but it was just made for good conversation and made for an interesting experience, like experiments in the human connection. I had a couple of cool manifestations in Texas. One was, I love the perfume Heaven by Gap, and they had discontinued it about 10 years ago. But I found it in Connecticut, and they actually still sell it in the Gap factory outlets. So I've been looking for it because I'm running low. And I knew I was going to find it in Texas. It was crazy. So right before we left, I called some places in California and literally called this place about 40 minutes from me. And the woman said, oh, someone just called this morning and asked me to put them all aside for her, because those of us who love Heaven, we'll do this. We'll call and we will buy them all up. So I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to find it in Texas. So we get to the hotel and I kind of Google where the Gap factory is, and it's about 35 minutes away. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to work out. So one morning my husband was like, well, we should do some more Christmas shopping. And I was like, oh, well, there's this place. And I think, and he's like, just call and see if they have it. So I call and they go, oh yeah, we have 3. And I was like, perfect. Like that will get me to spring before they bring more out in California. And we got there and I ended up getting 5. So that was so freaking cool. That was such a cool manifestation. And I knew I was going to get it there. And then the other thing that happened was we were asking for an authentic barbecue place. So they gave us the name of Stubbs, and we had an Uber driver bring us there. And as soon as we sit down at the table, I look over. In fact, I took a picture of it. And there's a barbecue sauce jar with the guy, Stubbs, who we buy his barbecue sauce. And I didn't realize it until I sat down. So I was like, oh, my husband was like, what's the matter? I was like, oh my God, this is the place. And the waitress was like, oh yeah, that's our barbecue sauce. I was like, what are the chances? And those are the things that happen that make me go, this is a giant freaking setup. Like we are being set up to be surprised and delighted in manifestations every time we live in the lightness of life. Every time we live in this like excitement and joy and expectation that good things are going to happen. So it was super fun. We had an awesome weekend, and today we are back to reality, and it's cool because I like my reality. So it wasn't a problem. I came home. I'm like, God, I love my house. I love what I do. This morning, I finished up the new Mindful Manifestation Secrets journal and daily guide. It's going to be ready for you so fast. The guy who did the formatting for me did a tremendous job. I just had a few fixes, And that should be hot off the presses. I'm really praying before Christmas, but not before Christmas, will be right a second after, but you will be able to get it and give it. And oh my gosh, I'm so pumped for this book. I really am. It's so good. It's so, so, so good because it gives you a guide and where you need to be super diligent. We need to be super diligent with our thoughts because it's always going to drag you back. And this is the thing. When you start to change your identity and you start to become someone new and think differently and do differently and shift the energy field of your life, that old identity is going to work to drag you back. And the way that we truly become successful in really, really connecting with this new identity and only living from this new identity is by no longer responding the same way, and to keep coming back to what we know and to heal the wounds that are trying to call us back. That is the way. And this book has journal entries and promptings and things that you can do to gain clarity. Like, so 2023 is going to be the bomb squad because you're going to read this book and you're going to understand what it takes to move forward in your manifestation process. And that I am super excited about. The other thing I'm really excited about is the class I have coming up. I believe I did December 28th. I'll have to check the date. That's going to be a live Zoom class, and that is going to help prepare you for 2023. So it's going to be like meditation, mindfulness, manifestation, all put into one. You're going to get a free guided meditation to help really prepare you to release energy and to set new intentions. And that class is $77. It's on my website, www.livelifegolden.com. Go there, purchase it. Spend time with me. I'm telling you, it will alter the life that you live. And if you're too afraid to be on Zoom, the recording is available and you can watch it afterwards. But I promise you, it will be information that will help you propel you to living your dreams in 2023. 2023, I have such a good feeling about that. And I don't like to segment years because I believe in moments. I believe that we have the ability to create anything in any moment. But 2023 feels different, and it could be the trajectory, the momentum that I've created already. But I really believe we're going to see a lot of manifestation. And I really believe that there's a lot of people, especially if you're listening to this, that you are taking your power back in 2023 is going to be something you've never seen before. You're going to have a lot of abundance and power, and you're going to manifest the things that you've been dreaming about. I just have a feeling. I love that feeling. All right, let's get into this conversation today. I've already spent 12 minutes of the show talking about myself and my experiences, but some of y'all like that. See, now I can say y'all and it makes sense. I got myself 2 pairs of boots, cowgirl boots. I was so excited. My husband was like, I want to buy you a pair of boots. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And I really needed a pair because the soles, I have just worn the crap out of my boots. And I wear cowboy boots in California, and sometimes people question that, but I don't care. I just love them. I believe I was a cowgirl in another life, and I love the way they feel, and I love the way they look. So I ended up with 2 pairs, and my husband rocks, and that was a blast, shopping at Allen's Boots, which I guess is pretty iconic. Super fun. All right, so this is going to cover a lot of things about death, about your fear of death, fear of dying, fear of losing loved ones. We're going to go into sudden deaths, suicides, all the things that grief is tied into, and what that frequency means to you, and what that frequency has done for you, and maybe kept you in a pattern or a cycle that has not allowed you to really flourish and heal and to learn from what that death was trying to teach you. Because, this is our movie and these are our cast of characters. And as much as you may say, well, I never would have written a suicide in for one of my characters. I know that, and I believe that. And suicide is tragic, and it's awful, and it's traumatic, and it leaves people, I think it's just the worst way. I mean, any sudden death, I think, is some of the worst feelings and questions that we can have moving forward if we could have done something to change it. And the reality of that is no, nothing could have changed anything because there are destinies involved. We have a destiny, and I believe our death is part of destiny. And I even believe suicide could be a destiny as well. I'm not totally positive about that, obviously, because I'm not on the other side, but I do believe that there are lessons that we need to take from every experience that we have, and the expansion and growth that we experience from accepting those things and no longer being in a frequency of fighting against them or feeling like they shouldn't have happened or just not accepting. I really believe that grief is a sorrow that is reaped in unacceptance. It's not accepting what is, and it's allowing yourself to tune into a frequency of just what you can see here, just what's in front of you, instead of trusting and believing and knowing that there are other things on the other side. And when I say the other side, that may sound woo woo and airy fairy, but it really just means if you believe, if you believe in universal source energy, if you believe in divine connection, if you believe in the non physical counterparts and angels that we have that we cannot see, there are forces that we cannot see. And I truly believe that all of our loved ones that go beyond that, where we cannot see, are still very much a part of our non physical team. They're very much here. And our grief, unfortunately, because grief is a low frequency, grief cannot connect in the higher frequencies of where our loved ones are now, which is the angelic realm, which is a high, high vibration of unconditional love and streams of consciousness. So in order for us to really connect with their energy fields again, which I totally believe we can do, and I have stories to prove that, we have to get out of the grief. We have to heal. We have to allow ourselves to heal and accept. And I really believe going beyond grief is healing and accepting. I do speak from quite a bit of experience. Now, I've never lost a parent, although I am estranged from my parents. So there's definitely a type of death and grief there. I have lost very close friends. I have lost very close family members. I've never lost a child. And honestly, when it comes to my family and any kind of fears around my family, I always wrap my family in angels, always, every single one of them. The second I start to have an anxious thought about any of my daughters or my husband or my granddaughter, I wrap them in angels and I interrupt that anxiety or fear, because it doesn't serve any of us. I don't want to send them that energy, right? We're sending them that energy. So I want to send them love. I want to send them protection. I want to send them faith. I want to send them trust. And I always tell God, divine source energy, like, keep my family intact. Okay. Just keep us intact. And I trust and I have faith. And in this life, we never know. So, and we can either believe the worst and fear the worst, or we can shift it and believe in the best and have faith and trust that everyone is protected, and know, in our heart of hearts, that there is no end, that we are part of this stream of consciousness that never ends. So we are still very much a part of their experience, and they are still very much a part of ours. Now, if you don't feel that at all, and maybe you don't even believe that, it's hard for you to connect with them if you're in that scope of not believing it, or not not connecting with it because you're too much in the grief. So our beliefs and of death and fears of death are deeply, deeply rooted in our society. And depending on what you believe, I think about funerals. So I have had really close friends die from suicide, drug overdoses. I mean, when I was younger, we were slammed with death and grief around almost every corner. And I find that interesting, that thinking back to how much we dealt with. We were just talking about this the other day. My husband's neighbors that we used to go over all the time, they were this older couple. They died 3 weeks apart, and they very much had a very strong family. And I was friends with their family, with their kids, who were older. They were like in their early 20s. And because of my husband and his sister, I was over there all the time. So this was up close. They weren't my parents, they weren't my family, but they were friends. And the grief that family had from this 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks to the hour. Like, we changed the clocks, but if we hadn't changed, I mean, that kind of stuff, you're just like, whoa. So, dealing with that death. And then my husband's grandfather died. And then a couple days later, his grandmother died, different sides of his family. His mom's dad died, and then his dad's mom died. And so dealing with that funeral after funeral, wake after wake was just, it's just, and you're young and you don't know how to deal with it. And there's a lot of crying and there's a lot of unexplained energy, right? Like unexplained energy. And there's open caskets, and like the open casket thing just, whoo, man, that one just throws me for a loop. Like you're staring death in the face. And it's a really interesting thing that we do in our society. And I don't think I condone it. I think it's a lot. And I think, I don't know. I think that it adds to the trauma, to be personal about it. But I mean, that's my personal view of it. I do know some people need that. They feel like they need that to close the chapter, to really let go, to really accept it. And I get that. Personally, I don't think I need it, but if you need it, then that's great. But, I think funerals are very much very sad, and they just add to the grief and they just make it harder. When I was in my late 20s, my husband's cousin was killed in a car accident, and he was like our brother. He was, whew, man, uncle to my children. We did everything together. My husband and him worked together, grew up together. We loved him. We adored him. He was a bright, bright light. There were so many people at his funeral because he was in the National Guard and he was in the fire department. He was a fireman, and just a huge bright light to so many. So many people. His wake was 7 hours long, and his wife was my best friend at the time. I still adore her. She was my best friend, and I stood by her side for 7 hours. So I felt like I felt the grief of a widow. Like it was so, we brought her family home with us. I stayed with her for weeks at a time. So, being up close and personal with that grief is so life altering. It changes the identity of who you are. So one night, this was right after his funeral, we were over her house and she was afraid to stay home alone. And she lived in this huge old home, kind of creepy. And she had these three babies under the age of 5. So she asked us if she could stay with us. I'm like, yeah, just come to our house. You guys just sleep at our house. Bring the kids. We'll put mattresses on the floor, whatever we have to do. And I remember our bedroom was underneath the bedroom that she was staying in. And I remember hearing her little boy just sobbing. He was just sobbing. He just wanted to go home. And he was 3 years old at the time. He's now, he's now 23. And wow, what a gentleman he is. We just had an incredible vacation with him in Newport, California. And I just adore him. Oh my goodness. I love him so much. But I remember there were opportunities at this point where when someone dies, the veil gets really thin. So the veil between our world and the non-physical world gets really thin. And at the time, I was extremely spiritual. We were actually in the Catholic Church. I was doing a lot of guided meditations. I was really opening myself up and starting to really channel. And I was really deeply connected to Jesus and Mary and just the whole ritualistic Catholicism. And I remember laying in bed and praying. And I remember going, God, this is so hard. Like, we need help. This is so, so hard. Please help us. This is so hard. And I had this moment, an incredible peace come over me. And it was like the heavens opened and there was this light. And I just felt a peace beyond understanding. That's what I felt. And it was like, everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right, I heard. And it was not my voice. It was crazy. And I shared it with everyone the next day. And, people were hanging on that. They were hanging on what I was saying because it meant that he was okay, that he had gone to a place that was beyond what we could see, but he was still very much with us. And so a couple of weeks after he died, or a week after he died, we had a trip to Ireland planned. So my husband's from Ireland. And I remember we didn't really have time to grieve. We were sad, we were crying, we were with the family. It was a whirlwind. And then whoof, we whisk off to Ireland. And we didn't want to cancel our trip because we knew he had gone to Ireland. Our cousin had gone to Ireland. We knew that he was excited for us to go to Ireland. So we wanted to honor that. And while we were in Ireland, I had this moment and I was sitting on a bus and it was, Ireland can be very rainy. And that day it was super sunny, super sunny. We had beautiful weather the whole time we were in Ireland. There was one night it rained and we stayed in a castle. And the sun was shining through the window of the bus. We were on this little tour. And I just said, Brian, where are you? I was like, where are you? And I got this booming voice. It's the most ethereal thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And he said, I'm in the sunshine, silly. It's not an accident. The sun's been shining the whole time. And I just started weeping. And my husband was like, what is wrong? And I shared with him, and it just made him feel better. It was like, because we had kind of stepped out of the grief, I was able to connect. And that's the beauty of healing. And that's the beauty of letting go of this frequency of grief. Grief is defined. I'm going to give you the definition of grief. And once again, I'm all over the place again, so I got to find it. Grief is defined as deep sorrow, especially by someone's death. So realizing that the frequency is deep sorrow means you cannot connect with those beyond the veil. They can't show you miracles. They can't show you crazy birds flying around. I mean, we had a situation with when my husband's father passed away about a year and a half ago. And, we spent a couple months with our puppy, and we had spent time with him before. He was one of the very few family members that have come out to California to stay with us for like months at a time. And he had just spent a couple months with us, and he went back home, and he had Lewy body dementia. And dementia, to me, one of the things that I channeled for a client one day was that dementia is because someone is so afraid to die that dementia allows them to live between the worlds for a little bit and to transition easier so they don't have so much fear when they do die. So he was going down and his mental capacity he was really struggling, and my husband's sister was taking care of her and it was taking care of him, and it was just getting harder and harder. And he died. He died of a heart attack. And it was so interesting because I remember him saying to me so many times, like, I've cheated death. Like, I should have been dead 20 years ago. I mean, he lived through lung cancer. They took a quarter of his lung out. He smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day for so long. He had a heart attack previously that he healed from. He felt like he had already cheated death. So when I got the call that he passed away in that July, I just said, good for you, Poppy. And I think it was the first time I ever felt incredibly settled about someone's death, and that they lived their life, in such a way that I had peace, and I knew so strongly that he was right there. And for a long time, we would see this bird in our backyard, and we used to joke all the time that it was Poppy. And I believe that. And because I believe that, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like he's still around. And he does give us signs. He gives my daughter signs all the time. So you will get those signs when you get out of that intensity of grief and when you stop being in the frequency of grief. So when we're faced with sudden deaths, this is sudden deaths of suicide or cancer or, a car accident, or the ways that we feel like we're cheated, right? We got cheated. That person died too soon. They died too early. They died too young. My husband's cousin was 31 years old. He had just turned 31 3 days before that. And you feel cheated. My aunt died of pancreatic cancer when she was 58. And the interesting thing about her was she was like my second mom. In fact, my third daughter, Emma, is Amelia Kathleen, which is neat. She's named for my grandmother and my aunt. And when my aunt passed away, I think my grandmother actually died of grief from her oldest daughter dying because they were super close. And my grandmother died only like 6 months later. 2 of the closest women that I've been in my life. And when I was a little girl, I remember coming home from my aunt's house. I used to spend months at her house in the summer. I just loved her family. I loved her so much. And I remember coming home and crying when I was like 8 years old and laying in bed thinking about what I would feel like when my aunt died. How so strange for a little 8-year-old. So I think on a soul level, I knew she wasn't going to be around forever. And that was a really interesting thing when she died, because that death was, it was a total alter in my world. So when you have somebody die that's so close to you, that you love so much, and you feel powerless, right? Like the first thing you feel when we found out she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and she died within a few months of her diagnosis, maybe 6 months. And when you get, I remember going to her funeral and saying, like, life is never going to be the same. Like, I had that really incredible realization, that was just, it was defying. It was just so heavy. And it took me a long time to, really process her death. Obviously, I'm still sad about it. I miss her so much. She was, gosh, that was actually right near Brian's death. I think it was a year from Brian's death. So we had a lot of deaths going on. And when someone like that, someone you're so close to, and you feel like they're taken from you, right? When somebody dies of cancer or a heart attack or suicide, you feel like they've been taken. Like it's not fair. They've been stolen. And because of that, there can be feelings of resentment, and there can be feelings of angst and pain that you feel like you can't heal from that. And the truth is, your grief is the frequency that is keeping you stuck. So, because of that death, my identity changed. Because of our cousin's death, our identities changed. Our families became different. That's what happens really with every death. Families become different. There's different family dynamics. In fact, my grandmother and my aunt were the matriarchs of our family. So I remember my grandmother was saying, please keep the family together. And I really tried my best. But what my grandmother didn't know when she said that was what was going to go down after she died, and how that keeping the family together was next to impossible. And so I did the best I could. And, I've kept my family a very strong unit. And, we all do the best we can. So when it comes to grief, I wanted to just touch on the frequency part of it. Okay, so here we go. By believing that we have trouble, growing past. If we really believe that, if we really believe that someone's death happened too soon and we've been cheated, and, suicide has a whole different energy about it, because we actually feel like the person did it. So there can be resentments, there can be anger, there can be, betrayal. All those things can be like wrapped up in that grief frequency. But when we do that, when we believe and we have trouble growing past it, we will always stay in the frequency of the grief. And because of that, staying in that frequency of grief and missing them. I had a show that I just did on missing recently. It was in my top 80s podcast, and I'll put the episode underneath. But when we stay in that energy of missing, we keep ourselves in an energy of misery, that we don't allow that trauma or that wound to heal. And it's okay to heal. It's okay to live your life. It's okay to, begin again. It's okay to release the hold that this grief has on you, because it doesn't honor them. It doesn't honor their life by living in sadness. It doesn't prove that you loved them. And, I have heard actually one of the shamans that I worked with in Sedona, he said, the amount of grief you feel is because the amount of love you felt. And I believe that. I really do. But I also believe that there's lessons and there's expansion and growth that comes from our healing from our passed away loved ones. So instead of being in that frequency of grief, we can start to believe new things and set new intentions for our lives. Um, what we decide about our loved ones who have crossed over is a huge part of how we feel. If you can navigate death and grief differently and really believe that they're right there with you, that they live on in your energy field, that you can connect with them by meditating on them, by letting go of the sadness and trusting that they're right there with you, you're going to experience a lot of different things. You're going to get yourself unstuck, first of all, and you're going to put yourself in a frequency of connection. And that's what you want, because that feeling of connection will help you to stop missing so much. I just want to see what else I have not covered. Okay, I went through all of that already. Okay, so fear. All right, so letting go of the grief is going to allow you to be in a frequency of something different. Now, if you feel like you've been in grief for a long, long time and it's really challenging, like it's a child, I mean, to me, losing a child, and I hate the word losing because we're not losing them. They've just passed on. They've passed through. They're right on the other side. We still have that energetic connection. We still have that soul bond. But it's the hardest thing I think you could ever probably go through. A child, a spouse, a parent, if you're super close. I understand it's hard. But the truth of the matter is, how long do you want to stay in the hard? And how long do you want to hold yourself in a place where you're not allowing yourself to really experience life because you're so tuned into the misery and grief frequency? It doesn't honor life. It doesn't honor your life. It doesn't allow you to live life to the fullest. And if you're living in fear of really living your life to the fullest, because maybe you do have a fear of death, or you do have a fear of doing something wrong or screwing something up, those fears are false evidence appearing real. And it's time to step into a more spiritual base of manifesting, which means you trust, you have faith, you understand that this journey is about your expansion and growth, and that anything that happens is part of that. Everyone is part of your movie. Everyone is part of this grand scheme of life and death. I really feel like most of us walk around with this false sense of security that we're going to live forever, and everybody's working to save for retirement. And how many people die before they even retire, or die the second they retire? So they never really enjoyed their life because they were saving up for something they had no guarantee about. So we've got to remove the social programming and the fear of not having enough or being enough, or really preserving that life force. We're preserving the life force when we live our lives fully. When we stop living in a frequency of low density and low emotions and wounds and traumas, it's really walking around with a lot of victimhood. And I mean, I get it. I get that it's hard sometimes, and the greatest thing you can do with grief is process it, journal about it, cry about it, have emotions about it. Don't shove it down. I think a lot of times what happens is we don't have the capacity to deal with it. And so a lot of it goes unprocessed. And then it shows up in other areas of our life, or we hear about a friend's husband passing away. I remember when, oh my goodness, my kids were really little. I think my older two were in elementary school, super little. And this man that we were friends with their family and their kids. And he got hit in the head with something at work and died. And, my husband he's a general contractor. He's, got that job, and man. And he left her with these 2 little kids or 3 little kids. And I couldn't sleep for weeks. I mean, it just haunted me. And I felt so much grief for her. And the trouble with that, with feeling too much grief for someone and thinking that you would know how they feel, is that you don't. And this is why. Because we get special graces when our path opens up in that way, and we're given this grand scheme of expansion and growth, where we have to expand and grow from a massive life change, from a total identity change. You go from being a wife to a widow, right? You go from having to make money to, from being a stay-at-home mom to having to now worry about finances. I've seen lots of women like that as well. And the only thing I can say about that is get your life insurance in order. Like no matter how much money you have right now or what's going on, we have two like really small term policies. Like just get your life insurance in order. It's really important to take care of your family because when you're dealing with that much grief, going out and having to worry about your bills is the last thing you're going to want to do. I remember even at the time that my husband's cousin died, we oh my gosh, our finances were a disaster and they just got worse because you have to take time off from work. We offered to pay for things for her because she had no money. I mean, it was just crazy. She was lucky that he was a firefighter. There were trusts put in place for her kids and she was taken care of. But it was a scary, scary time for her. So to deal with the finances on top of that, life insurance is definitely the way to go. And you can just get term policies for cheap just to get yourself locked into something so you make sure that your family is taken care of. So with that, let me see. I just want to see if I forgot anything. Yeah, that's really important. All right. So the fears of death of self and others. And this can happen when you're faced with something like that. Sandy Hook school shootings, man, I don't think I slept for weeks after that, just dealing with. And one thing that I realized about the Sandy Hook school, now for those of you that don't know, I grew up in Sandy Hook and I went to that elementary school. It was an amazing place, a very safe place. That town was very safe. And I did all of my stuff there. So I was still my hometown and I lived 3 towns away. And so the energy that year was, right near Christmas. And people were like, I don't even know how I'm going to celebrate. And I was like, we have to shift this. In fact, that was one of the things that got me out doing law of attraction seminars was that exact experience and going, I have to help people. I have to do something to help people. So we rented a hotel room and we had like 45 people come and we reminded them of the preciousness of life and not to let this tragedy win, but instead to make you realize what the preciousness of life is. When I was Catholic, I used to go to funerals all the time. I knew a lot of people. And I would go to funerals of older people that passed away to support the family, but also because I loved having recognition of the preciousness of life and realizing that, we've got today, but we don't know if we have tomorrow. And because of that, we need to do today and not put off. We need to live our lives to the fullest today because we don't have any guarantees. And we've got to stop putting our dreams way off into the future. This is something I share in my new book, Mindful Manifestation Secrets Daily Guide and Journal, is putting your visions, your hopes, your dreams way off into the future is cheating yourself now. Find a way to live your life to the fullest now. And that is the greatest way that we honor our passed away loved ones is by really living our life to the fullest, really being in joy. Because I'm going to tell you right now, they don't want your sadness. They don't feel sad. And when they see your sadness, I don't think that they feel sad from that, but I don't think that it honors their life. You're expressing energy, right? Like we are the expression of all that is. And non-physical energy is being allowed to experience things through us. So think about it this way. Oh, here we go. Download. Think about it this way. They now are experiencing life through you. So what do you want them to experience? Do you want them to experience sadness and misery and grief? Or do you want them to experience joy and healing and living your life to the fullest and passion, abundance, and making the most out of what you have? People that have died suddenly, suicide, car accidents, whatever, died suddenly, right? Those people didn't get a chance to live life to the fullest and they lived in a lot of pain. I'm going to say the ones that died of suicide lived in a lot of pain, and death was the only way they could find out. They could relieve themselves of that pain. And that's why people choose suicide, because they feel like there's no other way. They feel like the pain is so much that they can't stand to live with it for another moment. And if we can accept that and we can forgive that and we can look at that as the destiny of their life path here and the expansion and growth that we are being brought to, we will transform the grief into a passion for life. Transform your grief into a passion for life. Oh, so good. Wow. That was a download. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to see if I forgot anything because I've been flying through this. And all right. So this is the thing about higher perspectives and what you may believe. You may have been given, who knows what you grew up with. You could have believed that you die, you're put in a box and you're in the ground and that's it. It's over. There's nothing after that. You could believe that there are afterlives where and I never believed this. And if you believe it, it's okay. And you have to, you deal with it. But the whole idea of purgatory, it always threw me for a loop. I'm like, and part of my problem with purgatory is this. A lot of what we do here, the wrongs that we do, the sins that we commit. Now, some people, yeah, they might have consciousness about it, but a lot of times we're doing things out of unawareness and we're growing and we're learning and we're expanding. So to believe that we're going to be punished for things that we did before we were fully aware of what we were doing, and even people that, you think are doing things that are terrible and they have a full consciousness of what they're doing and the pain they're causing and they like doing that. It's just not helpful. It's not a helpful thought. It's not a helpful frequency to put yourself in. So instead, because a belief is a thought you keep thinking, my position in all of this and the things that have been downloaded to me is I love to believe that we're part of this stream of consciousness. I love to believe that I'm an expression of divine energy and that there is this, afterlife, they call it, the heaven, the hell. I don't know that I believe any of that. I believe that we are souls having a human experience. I absolutely believe that. But I also believe that we're in school, and we're expanding and growing through this life experience. And as we do that and we pass on and we go, cross over the veil. I mean, there's so many near-death experiences that say that there's something on the other side. We can't defy that. We can't deny that. So, to believe that there is this incredible energy that supports us, that's full of unconditional love, that our passed away loved ones are just, over here where we can't see them, just beyond where we can't see, but we can feel when we put ourselves in the vibration of love and remembrance and honor. When we honor their lives by letting go of the sadness and instead loving the memories and loving who they were and doing things to honor their gifts and their talents that they had here on earth, and allowing yourself to really feel into that and to really be part of that, it helps you to connect, and like I said, if a belief is just a thought you keep thinking, then what if we gave it a new meaning? What if we got curious about what these deaths are here to teach us? What if we look out at the preciousness of life and stop feeling like we were cheated, but started to really bask in the presence of our very own lives? What if we let go of the anger? What if we let go of the grief? Who are we then? A lot of us connect with that identity of grief. I know someone very, very special to me. My husband actually grew up with this family, and her son, geez Louise, died suddenly. And he fell off of a scaffolding, and he was in my husband's business. He actually worked for us, and he was one of our very, very, very best friends for a long time. And he was actually the godfather to my oldest child. And then when my husband's business went down, they had a falling out over like $1,000. Yeah, yuck. And he died a couple years into our estrangement from him. And his mother immediately called my husband, and he ended up doing the eulogy for him. And he was a great person to speak about not letting, time go by, and telling people how much you love them and not letting money get in the way. Good Lord. And his mom lives in that frequency of grief. There's no doubt about it. You can feel it when you talk to her. And like I said, I do not judge anyone for the way that they choose to live their lives. But what I will say is honoring the preciousness of someone's life is not living in the frequency of missing them. It's living life to the fullest and finding joy again, working to find joy again. It's not easy. There's a determination that needs to happen. There is a fortitude that needs to happen. But when you do that, what will happen is you will be able to connect. You will be able to connect. And because you'll be able to connect, you will miss them less because you will feel them more, because you've decided, I am connecting with them. Start asking the questions. Where are you? How can I feel you? Start talking as if they are in the room, because they're right there beyond the veil. And I don't have, a whole lot of evidence other than my own experiences with this and my own belief and trust that this isn't it. I know this isn't it. I can feel it. I know it isn't it. And because of that, I live life a little more fully and a little less fearfully. Isn't that what you want? So wrap your friends, your family, and angels. Trust that your journey is there to help you expand and grow, and that you chose this life to do that with, to allow you to have new awarenesses, to become stronger, to become more powerful. Many of the deaths that we've experienced are there for us to do that. I even believe that family estrangements are meant to do that, to help us to find our power, to help us to realize who we truly are, and to navigate a life path that allows us to become more at every turn, in every moment. So we don't ever want to get stuck in a frequency. We don't ever want to be pulled back constantly to an energy field that feels awful. Will we still have sadness? Absolutely. Especially, I'm crying today over deaths that were 20 years ago, because those people were near and dear and precious to me. And there's times when I can think about them and feel joy. There's times when I am cooking in my kitchen. And I actually had an energy lady confirm this for me. And I will feel my aunt and my grandmother there with me. They loved to cook. I love to cook. They definitely have passed that through me. And because of that, I have so much joy in cooking and feeling the energy of them and knowing that they are there and knowing that they are so smiling and beaming on me for being a wonderful mom and cook and wife. I know this. I can feel it. I can feel the energy of that. So as far as the fears that you may feel about death, let those go. Good Lord, turn off the news. I really truly believe that we have a destiny. And one of the things, if you're dealing with an illness or a disease, or you're afraid of some genetic stuff, I would highly, highly recommend listening to anything from Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, or even Deepak Chopra has a book out. And I think he has a new one out too, called Quantum Healing. And it's very interesting how, alternatives to medicine in the medical field. They have found cures to cancer. They found cures to diseases. They found all these things. And we now have to be diligent about searching for these alternatives so that we're not buying into a program that we are powerless and that we have to go down the routes of medicines that are just going to make us sicker. I really feel strongly about that. The other thing that I feel really strongly about is really preserving and really having gratitude and really connecting with your physical body and taking care of yourself. Because if you are not taking care of yourself, you're just waiting. You're waiting to get ill if you're not taking care of yourself. So that means really researching and getting smart about what your immune system is and how to, really take things, take vitamins that are going to really help you. I remember hearing a while back, we don't have a flu season. We have a vitamin D deficiency season. Take your vitamin D, especially right now, because when our vitamin D drops, that's when our immune system drops. That's seasonal depression comes in. Vitamin D is so vital and important. So do your research. There's so many alternatives to, and people out there that have cured themselves from diseases, that we have to get more diligent about not just taking the doctor's word for things. I've heard so many stories. I've heard a really funny story just about doctors diagnosing people, right? And they diagnose and they give you a death sentence, and so many people that have defied that because they're like, that's not my story. I'm overcoming that. And it really it doesn't upset me, but it could upset me that doctors do this, because it's just like, why wouldn't you give people the best case scenario instead of the worst case scenario? But they want to prepare people, and that's their job, and I understand that. However, I heard this story about this guy, and he was given a death sentence. He was told, okay, you have 6 months to live or 3 months to live. You have cancer. And so he basically sold everything he owned, and he went around and he traveled the world, and he had a blast. He had an absolute blast. And 6 months went by, still wasn't dead. And he goes back to the doctor, and I can't remember if they switched his results with somebody else and he never had cancer, or if going and living his life to the fullest actually cured the cancer. I can't remember, but either one is a pretty good story. And, because he had lived his life to the fullest, he realized how precious life was, and he didn't take anything for granted, and he lived his life to the fullest. And getting a clean bill of health was a total plus, right? So understand that you're in charge here, that you're in charge of your health. You're in charge of the way you treat yourself. You're in charge of the frequency you're in. And you're in charge of how full you live this life experience and how much you recognize the preciousness of it, and allowing your passed away loved ones to shine a light on that preciousness. And instead of shining a light on the grief and the sadness that you feel from missing them, you turn that sadness into love, and you remember how much you love them, and you remember the good times, and you let that frequency raise by understanding that they're still there, that they're still very much a part of your life experience, and you will feel them when you get into the frequency of love and appreciation and trust and faith and hope and all of those wonderful things that are less, toxifying than grief. We've got to get off of that grief thing. We've got to process it. We're not meant to live in it forever. We definitely are meant to process it. It's one of the deepest of human emotions. And because of that, we're being given a chance to become anew, to find a new purpose in life, to become more, and to not take life for granted. So I want to do a little release. I've been doing these lately, and I really feel just inspired to do this today in case you do have some grief stuck in your body, or in case you do have some unnecessary fears. So if you're driving, pause this and do it later. If you're not, join me. Closing your eyes, taking a deep breath, and breathing out, and taking another breath, and breathing out. So we call upon divine energy. We call upon our passed away loved ones, angelic energies, our angelic team, our angelic army. We call upon all those that have gone beyond the veil. And we ask for a full release from the dense frequencies of grief, of challenge, of sadness, of misery, and of missing. And we take a deep, deep breath and just see where that comes up and breathe it out. So we're breathing out grief. We're breathing out misery. We're breathing out any belief systems that say we cannot connect with our loved ones. We're releasing old belief systems. We're releasing the sadness, releasing the misery, releasing the disconnection Yeah, release the disconnection of that non physical energy that you haven't allowed yourself to feel. Releasing all energies of fear around death, sadness of death, fear of our loved ones dying. So we release the distrust of this life. We release the fear that life isn't going to give us what we need to expand and grow from. We release all energies of fear around our life story, around what's happening. And we release all tendencies to go to worst case scenarios, releasing anxiety and releasing anything that blocks our joy. And releasing all energies of low frequency and all energies of feeling in stuck frequencies of grief. Yeah, just keep breathing that out, letting it go. I can feel it's leaving. And then open up your crown to new light, to new love, to new connection, to inviting in energies of non physical, the connection of our non physical world, to the thinning of the veil so we can get the signs, so we can see the miracles, so we can connect with those who have passed away, passed on, not away, just on. Allowing ourselves to really connect with the love that we felt for them, the trust that we feel for this life experience, and the ability that we have to now live in faith. And we allow ourselves to really connect with all of the energy of all that is, of the stream of consciousness that we are all so. And just let that light accumulate around your body. Imagine this big ray of golden light all the way around your body, activating your cells, releasing you from any low vibration, and putting yourself in the highest vibration of health, of wellness, of living life to the fullest, of lightheartedness and joy, passion and freedom, and the abundance that is your birthright. Awesome. All right, that's my show for today. It's getting dark in here. All right, I love you all. Peace out.